All right, guys. Brent Abel here, webtennis.com, goldballhunting.com, and it could be inyourface.com today as well with the great Jeff Jacklich. Jeffrey, you're down in Modesto, is that right?
Yep.
San Joaquin Valley, California?
Yep. It's a pretty good day down here today. Still a little hazy though, smoke-wise, but mostly it's a little better.
Good deal. Hey guys, thanks for hanging out with us today. We are going to chat about, this really does apply to, primarily we're going to talk about singles, but we could come up with some double situations as well, where geometrically you maybe want to be thinking about a different shot. But Jeff, you and I were kicking around an idea that we wanted to talk about today, and the thing that you came up with is, well, we decided to leave Roger Federer's name out of it. But that was really kind of the spark in your mind that kind of got the topic today going.
Right.
Yeah, we thought that if we put Fed's name into the title, it'd be a little hypey. Not that there's anyone else out there in the online tennis instructional world who creates any kind of hypey headlines or whatever. Don't get me started on that, please, because that could get real ugly, real nasty, real fast. Anyway, I know. So look, the title today is, are you making this, singles players, are you making this, and I've sort of added the word geometric mistake in your, it's something you don't want to be the first player to do in a point. And we're also coaching on what to do instead. So, Mr. Jacklich, the stage is all yours. What's on your mind about this?
Okay, here we go. So I'm going to start this off though with two questions, okay, for everybody, and that is one: are you missing the opportunity to have your opponent involved in helping you win? And then two, are you spending too much time trying to win the point? And usually that means trying to hit shots that your opponent can't touch. And so when you combine those two questions, you end up with what we're going to talk about today. And that is, how often or how very little do you as a player use the neutral ball up the middle to set the stage for actually getting the ball you want to inflict the pain, to take control of a point on? And this is just something that, last week's talk about pattern work, and this actually plays into the pattern work talk very well. And it's something that I've been tinkering with in my own game, and really getting back to some certain basics about point construction and being in the moment. And there's Jim. For God's sake, don't look for the exit too soon. That's right. Burn those words into your mind, and I think he has.
Well, look, and the first thing you said is, are you looking for the opportunity to allow your opponent to participate in you winning points? And look, that's not a flippant little question.
No.
It's a massive, massive mindset shift that, I know that a lot of you and I know a lot of players, whether they're even at the 4-5 level, where they don't really get that thing. And for me, I didn't get it for a long time until I really kind of got almost into the 65s. Yeah, it's not that long ago, right? To where I'm going, wait a minute. I don't have to win this point on my terms each and every time. So anyway.
Yeah, and that's part of the deal here, is that there is so much information that you can gather by driving a ball or even floating a ball, a big full court chip up the center of the court that hits within, let's say 2-3 feet of the baseline and kind of checks up. A full court chip, ball has arc to it. It's got backspin. It hits the court 2 to 3 feet from the baseline, and the ball hits and checks up. And the beauty of this shot is that One, it checks up. It doesn't just bounce and move through the strike zone as if it's a regular rally ball. So the very first thing that's happening is I'm not going to, the ball doesn't move through the strike zone. So I'm messing with his timing a little bit. Could be a lot, but a little bit. The next thing is I'm forcing him to deal with himself. He's going to have to get out of the way of the ball. What side does he tend to do that to? So I'm going to get some information. What side does he like? Not everybody runs around to hit a forehand. Newsflash, not everybody runs around to hit a forehand. So you're going to find some information on that. But just from my perspective, though, when I've hit that ball, I'm asking my opponent to do a few things. Get out of the way, make an adjustment in your swing, timing, and producing your own pace isn't as easy as it sounds, and hitting the ball in. Those last two things. Trying to produce your own pace from a dead ball and hit it in can become a very kind of a tricky little moment.
Yeah, for sure.
And I've used this tactic against players, top players in age groups younger than me who just like to crush the ball. And I figured out very quickly, like, you know what, when we're in the rally, this guy really tags the ball. He can pipe the ball pretty darn good. He's using my pace, blah, blah, blah. What happens when I hit a full court chip up the center of the court? All of a sudden, this guy is just over cranking himself because he sees this juicy thing hanging, low hanging fruit, and they over crank. And so it's like, okay, I'm going to rally, then throw in the off pace up the center. I want him to think that this is just steak and potatoes, that this is just a piece of cake. And I want him to live in that world and watch him just kind of end up over cranking in the net long, could even go wide if he's trying to go inside out with a forehand, whatever it might be. But I'm asking this guy something that doesn't seem like I'm asking him much, but it's actually more than
well, it's a little bit of false advertising. It's a little bit of false advertising because assuming that the ball lands and checks up and sits there where you're talking about, which is doesn't literally bounce and go straight up. But I mean, it bounces, but you're right. It's not a low skidding ball. It goes in there and it checks up, meaning that if it bounces 3 feet from the baseline, if the guy's 2 feet behind the baseline, it easily gets to him. But it becomes this false advertising where it's going, oh, this ball's sitting up on a tee for me. Well, wait a minute. The pro I've been working with has been setting the balls up in a tee for me. And typically what happens is I'm supposed to crush it over there. I'm supposed to hit a winner over here. So it's false advertising. Are you okay there, Jeff? Did you lose me?
Yeah, I'm trying to.
You still with us?
There we go.
You back?
There?
Yeah, I know. No, we're fine with you. We see you perfectly fine.
Okay.
Did you hear what I said? Did you hear about the false advertising?
Yeah, I could hear it. I was trying to there was a phone call coming through and it was on my screen and I was like trying to navigate that.
Don't these people know that you got something going on? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, right? And so so the idea is and that's one part of this tactic. This isn't the whole tactic. This is just about understanding that you're asking your opponent to be engaged in it and to have to deal with the subtlety of ball pace change, ball spin change, and this dead ball that's just hanging in the air. Many times it can get over cranked and hit early because the ball isn't moving through the strike zone quite the same as the regular rally ball is. And I found that it can cause guys problems that, the other part of this that's really important is that it's a great way just to stay in a rally. Just bang it up the center of the court, regular rally ball, 3-4 feet in net clearance, and make the guy have to start. Now he has to now do something. Doesn't have to, but a lot of guys do. They feel like, now I have to get engaged in this, and now I'm going to produce my own angle now. And it's kind of, to me, it's interesting because I watch guys do this, and it's almost like they're not aware of what's happening to them, because they just see it as this ball that's just in the middle of the court. Now, we're not talking a ball that's in the middle of the court where they can get inside the baseline. That changes this dramatically. And now we're talking about actually legitimate angles that they have to work with if they're 3-4 feet inside the baseline. That's a different animal. I'm talking about a ball, a neutral ball that I'm sending full court that keeps my opponent at or behind the baseline to hit the ground stroke. Okay, so that's a critical piece of information here that you got to realize that's what sets the stage here.
All right. So what sets the stage is that you are inviting them, and this is the whole point of our discussion today. Don't be the first player to do this. And is you're throwing out an invite, and the invite looks like, wow, I'm going to be the star of the party here. And really what you're saying is when you throw the invite up right up the middle, they end up creating the first angle during the point.
Correct. Now,
so
right.
Tell us what's going on with that in terms of why we don't want to do that.
Well, you don't want to do that because you've created, if I go wide on the very first ball, or try to go so wide on the first ball, I'm actually creating the first angle for my opponent to use. He gets to decide now, am I going to roll it? Can he take the ball out the side door? And this isn't necessarily for, this isn't just pro talk. This is about, the reality of playing senior ball and I'd say 4 or 5 ball and up, in that realm where guys can hit a ball, gals can hit a ball that actually inflicts some pain and they can take an angle from the baseline and start to do something with it. And so if you watch, and part of the reason that this came up for me was like, I watch Fed play just because I happen to love the way he plays the game. I think it's beautiful to watch, but also I love to watch him tactically do what he does. And this is so interesting to me because I'll watch him hit these 2-3 balls right up the center of the court and then fade one a little bit to the guy's forehand intentionally. It's that little carve, inside out backhand, little carve up, kind of goes near the center of the court and then fades out to the deuce court. But the guy's only, 3-4 feet off the center of the court. And inevitably, they hit it to his forehand. And not up the center of the court. They hit it out to the corner. And it's like in that very moment, it's like, there it is. And Fed goes out there, and all of a sudden, he hooks that forehand, and he's got the guy, the next ball he's hitting from out in the alley someplace. And now he's got the whole court command in front of him. And so that's what we're talking about here is that if you're the guy that throws that first, pitch out there, out into the wings, it's like you're throwing it out there almost a little too far. It's not far enough to do the damage you're hoping, but it's not court-centric enough to give him no angle. There's this kind of gray area in there that it's the ball you don't want to give them. And it's kind of like that ball that's like a little more than halfway between center and the sideline. It's just a little bit more than halfway that really kind of presents this beautiful ball that the player can then really start to decide, how am I going to open this point up? And you just don't want to be there. And so the ball down the center really helps make the other guy make that first move. And then you're the one with the ball on your strings that gets kind of like, okay, do I want to open it up on this ball? Is it a ball that I can do that on? Or, you know what, I'm just going to zing this thing up the center of the court again and let him have the opportunity to help me out again. Let me see another pitch. And so that circles back to that statement is, are you giving your opponent an opportunity to help you participate in you winning? And again, it has nothing to do with, are they going to miss the shot?
Right.
It has to do with, are they going to give you tactically something that now you can inflict that extra bit of 5% more pain, 5% more angle, and does the ball come back 5% weaker than his normal forehand? And 5% less accurate. Oh, now it landed just 2 feet from the service line, which means my next ball, I'm up in the court, and I get to make another decision about how much pain can I inflict on this without actually trying to go for a winner when that's unnecessary.
No, that's good. That's good. I think it also brings into question uh, how comfortable are you staying in the point? And I think that a
Right.
lot of a
Right.
lot of players, and I, like I said earlier, I wasn't that comfortable. I mean, of course, I had a serve and volley style till I was about 60. Then I had to actually learn how to hit a ground stroke now and
Right.
then. But um,
One of those.
one of those things. Um, but I think that players understand the concept of, well, okay, I don't want to create the first angle, but you've got to get out of your mind that you are looking for opportunities all the time to inflict so much pain that either it's an outright winner, the guy gets his racket on it, but it doesn't come back, or he gets his racket on it and comes back and it's a fat sitter. So you've you've got to almost test that opponent saying, I'm a
Yeah.
little more comfortable staying in the point longer than you are, I think. Let's see.
Yeah.
And look, we're not talking about that situation where you hit a serve and let's say you do stay back and the return just gets chunked and it's just sitting there. It's sitting there a foot behind the tee. Okay, well, yeah, maybe you go right at the guy with your shot, but maybe you also go for a corner too.
Right.
So, guys, let's do this. If you have any questions so far, go ahead and type them in. You know, another thing is, Jeff, we could talk about doubles too as well, where lots of times I see players, they get a ball and they end up creating this really wide angle. And it doesn't really put that opponent in trouble. They can go out there. And now what it's actually done is your partner, let's say you hit this wide angle cross court, well, your partner's got to kind of move over and sort of protect a little bit of the line, right? You can't
Right.
just stand in the middle of the box now. You got to actually move towards your alley a little bit.
Right.
And now you're going, well, dang, it looks like if I don't move over with my partner, then the middle's wide open. But if I do that, then, and gosh darn it, then this guy's got a severe angle behind me. Maybe that wasn't such a great idea.
Right.
So,
Right. You got to understand the geometry that you're creating. It's not just about what they're going to, what you can do to them, but what geometry have you presented to them now to use against you, right? And so I tend to, and anybody that's seen me play dubs, I tend to take that first volley and just drive it straight back at the returner. Just drive it. If I can put some more stick on it and get it back there and get it at the guy's feet, assuming he's played the return from just inside the baseline, which is
right.
normal for dubs to be up in that area. And if I can get him just having to be a little bit, on his toes a little bit, having to do the short hop pickup, we're in really good shape at that point, So again, I think this idea of always looking to create an angle and to do something off that very first ball is really not necessarily your best play, especially on the doubles court, because the dynamics change so rapidly and so fast. And both players, I have to read the geometry according to what I've just done. My partner has to read the geometry as if he's hit the ball from where he is. I know that sounds kind of weird, but I'm not a fan of the, stay connected with the 10-foot rope or the 12-foot rope. I think that's one of the most ridiculous things ever in, thought processes in the game of doubles. It looks like it. I'll say that. It has a look when you see two players moving according to the geometry, it looks like they're connected, but they're both independently making decisions based on what was delivered. And that's a very different mindset than sticking with your partner. Because if I'm just moving to stay connected with my partner, I'm not taking into consideration what myself or my partner has delivered in terms of geometry. If my partner's reading the geometry wrong, why would I want to stay with him in that move, right? So anyway, that's just a little side note here on the doubles part of it that you don't want to get involved in that. So here's another. I'm going to run down here another thing here on hitting the ball at the center of the court. What can you learn from that from your opponent? Again, it's a great tactic. It's doing recon. what can I learn about this guy or gal when I drive a ball up the center of the court? One, what's his favorite side? If I haven't figured it out yet, maybe you haven't. It's not necessarily, everybody doesn't always, can't always run around and hit a forehand. It's not always what their favorite is. So going up the center of the court is going to give you some insight into really what their favorite side is.
Yeah, but don't you need a full Western grip to be able to do that?
Can I reach through the screen here and just strangle you down, Rennie?
Well, I'm just saying what you're talking about is so rare in terms of actual tennis instruction that relates to winning more tennis matches as opposed to, well, I just got this, I got to get around on it, right? And so I guess my point is I don't care how you hit it over there in terms of what Jeff's just saying. Just get it over there and start to do a little recon. Don't worry about practicing another 90 minutes in the ball machine with your new Western grip. Don't worry about that. Or your new two-handed backhand. Whatever it is. Whatever is comfortable for you, this strategy that Jeff is talking about, this tactic that he's talking about, works. It will give you information. More work off the ball machine or more drilling cross court isn't gonna move the needle in terms of winning more matches.
No. So you want to send this ball up the middle, and again, we're talking about if you want to call it a classic rally ball, something that lands within 3 feet of the baseline. The ball has to be well struck. We're not talking about being a pusher here and just shoving a nothing ball back. That doesn't check up like the chip I talked about. We're talking about a ball that just bounces and moves through the strike zone. It's just kind of a lame duck. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about a ball that you get that you can put some authority on it. Again, doesn't have to be blasted, but something that is well struck and is a quality ball that lands within 3 feet of the baseline. So one, we're going to figure out what side their favorite side is on. Because the player will do it over and over and over again. We are creatures of habit. And it's going to take you just a few to figure that out, that which side they really like, which side they want to go to. Next, we're also going to figure out their shot tolerance. If I feel like, the first ball this guy's hit has inflicted some pain and I don't like the geometry that I have, off of maybe I hit the return and the guy sticks the ball there and I really don't like the geometry I have to work with, boom, I send my next ball up the center of the court. And boom, I get another ball. And now we're in just whatever you want to call it, a regular rally. And then, okay, there's another ball. I don't like the geometry I have. Boom, I send it up the middle again. So if I'm comfortable with, as you said, Brenny, being in the point a little bit longer, and a little bit longer, guys, is not like, we're not talking about 12 or 13 or 14 hits. We're talking about 8 hits. Like I've hit 4, my opponent has hit 4, maybe 10, because something's going to break free before we get there. And so this tactic also allows you to figure out how angsty does my opponent get? How quickly do they hit their shot tolerance of, is it 3 balls? Is it 4 balls? Is it 5 balls? And it's going to be somewhere in there. I can almost guarantee that. And at that point, that ball up the middle becomes this, it's like the temptation. I'm the devil and I'm just handing them this ball. Oh, please, here you go. This is going to be so great. You're going to hit this beautiful inside out Western forehand into the corner. The crowd's going to go nutty. And it's going to be, and I just want to hand it to them and go here and watch them. And you know what? If they do that and they hit the line, I'm okay with that because now I know their margin.
Right.
And the next one, it's 2 inches wide. And the next one, they hack it someplace else. So where's that shot tolerance and how off the rails do they go? How, amped up do they get and what do they start to deliver when you push them to that point in a rally? And the key here is that I'm not giving them anything to work with. I'm giving them a neutral ball up the center of the court because I want them to have to think just a little bit more.
But what you are giving them is the thought that, Jeff has given me something to work with.
Right. It's just dangling the carrot. I just want here. It's going to be so great, you know.
So great.
So that's a big part of it. Is
Yeah.
again, you're going to learn your opponent's shot tolerance. When do they start to go off the rails a little bit and start to make silly choices about shot selection? How many balls does it take to get them there? And then this goes back to what's their favorite side, and then what happens after that is what do they seem to do regularly off of that side. Again, we are creatures of habit. And so what do they do? Every time when I give them this ball, they do this. That's information. And that's information then that we get to use and decide, how do I use that against them in that fashion? And so that neutral ball at the center also presents that. Where's their habit? What is their habit in this whole,
Well, look, I think it gets back also to the tennis court is just big enough to where when we're presented with the ball, it looks like we could go cross court into an opening. It looks like we could go up the line into an opening. And geometrically, it's just a misperception of what's really available for us. And so I encourage everyone to get comfortable, to get really, really comfortable with playing the ball up the middle and not thinking, well, why would I play a shot right at my opponent and give him a chance? Shouldn't I be trying to play the ball away from my opponent, right? And so that's a big deal. That's just a huge mindset shift that everyone's got to make, because if you don't make it, the geometry of the court is going to bite you in the butt over and over and over again, because it's like that. I mean, to me, the greatest running forehand of all time, Pete Sampras, who would just roll that thing over to the deuce side, roll it. Well, it didn't matter what it was, just some crappy little shot. And some guy would go, I'm going cross court. And I will never forget the time sitting in the Cow Palace, and it was like a Wednesday morning, nobody's around. And I'm right there on the sidelines, or maybe it wasn't the Cow Palace, maybe it was down in San Jose. And I'm right there, I'm probably 2 feet inside the baseline. And here comes this man like a panther, just stalking this ball, right? I'm on the deuce side of his court. And he's coming at me, and I'm just thinking, this is frightening watching him come in. And he takes this thing and just rips it. And I'm just thinking, and I watch it, and I look at the opponent going, that was dumb. That was really dumb. Don't ever do that again. Yeah. Make him beat you with his backhand. Right. I don't know, man. So I guess my point is that geometrically we have the wrong perception of what's really available to us. And I think the whole thing today is, don't be the first guy to misperceive. Don't create that first angle. Unless you get the fat chubber, don't be the guy to create that first angle.
Because the other thing that happens is when I keep my opponent court-centric and behind the baseline, the only way he can pass me is to hit the ball through the baseline at warp 10 from that position. I mean, they're going to have to blister it in order to make that happen. So if I'm court-centric and my opponent's court-centric with the ball behind the baseline, there is no angle for him to hit the ball out the sidelines. Literally, it's unless you are in the top 3 in the world, that angle doesn't exist. And so you have to realize then that I only need to cover them. When I hit this ball at the center, I only need to cover, how wide is the court? Single line?
27.
27? Yeah. So it's less like, 14 feet, less than 14 feet left or right. That's not a huge distance to cover. You're talking about 2 steps, literally, on a tennis court. 2 steps, and then plant and hit an open stance forehand or out there, and you're sliding the backhand, slice back into the court. So in watching Fed, I'm going to circle back to him. In watching Fed, watching highlights, because it's great now. You get to see, the point after point after point now. And watching him do this specific tactic, knowing his opponent can't beat him through the baseline because he's got it covered. it's just this beautiful thing to watch him do it over and over and over again. And then, of course, in the process, what's one of his favorite shots that opens up the court? He goes neutral. If the guy doesn't give him the forehand that he can go ahead and attack on, he goes backhand, high backhand, and now Fed has this, he steps up into the court and hits this knockdown slice backhand low and away into the guy's backhand side, forcing the guy to come forward where he can't come up on it and hit his, favorite topspin backhand. And now the guy's got to play the soft chip kind of thing. And Fed is just waiting there with the feed bag on. And so it's intentional. He hits that ball with the intention of making his opponent come forward and come to the net. It's not an accident. He knows that's not where the guy's the most comfortable. He knows that's not where the guy's going to do the most damage. It's where Fed now has the ball on his strings, and now he gets to pick and choose what he wants to do. So tactically, what hitting this type of ball does, it really gives you the opportunity to start to learn something about your opponent. And this all plays in again to last week as well, pattern work. What are you learning your opponent's tendencies? And then how do we use those things against them?
Yeah. Well, that's good. That's really good stuff. Hey, guys, listen, I would love for you to, we're here. I got 33 after the hour. We've got about another 12 minutes or so. I got to scoot. Is there something that you're working on with your game right now, guys? Anything that you've got going on? One thing that you're not quite getting figured out? I know a lot of us, maybe our court time's a little bit limited, but what are you guys working on with your game right now? If there's one thing that we might ask Jeff for his expertise on, what would that be?
I like what Rich says there. And Rich says, learning to be comfortable staying in the point a little longer rather than blasting it past the opponent where they can't touch it was a game changer. Yeah, it took a little bit, but Rich caught on very quickly.
Well, yeah, I mean,
I've seen,
and that's not unusual. It's not unusual to be thinking. I mean, we're so self-centered with the way we play the game, and I feel like last week and also today, Jeff, what you're talking about is you got to get some intel on your opponent. You got to be looking outside yourself. You got to trust your game enough to where it's okay to stay in the point for another shot or two.
Right.
Steve's saying, Jeff, does racket weight affect if you're late on the one-handed backhand?
Only if you're prepared late.
Well, I mean,
does racket? Yeah, I mean, if of course, the racket weight is the tendency now is to go so light in rackets, right? The racket's light and blah blah blah. And my personal experience being, more old school, obviously, is I like to have some weight in the racket because once I start to swing, I like the feel of it. So I kind of compare it to like this: if you put a 32-ounce bat in Jose Canseco's hands and say hit home runs with it, it's going to look different than when he has his regular weighted bat in his hands, right? That he has mass in his hands to actually get that thing generating through the ball. So I tend not to, I don't cheat to the lightweight side. My racket's probably just shy of 12 ounces now. So it is a little bit in the frame, but then the string adds about 1/2 to 3/4 of an ounce back into the racket. So I still hover in that 11.5 to 12 ounces, where back in the day, I was probably pushing 12.5, maybe 13 when I was stronger. Sampras racket was just a club.
Yeah.
I mean, just a
well,
club.
come on. Think about the guys back in the day. I mean, you're talking just clubs. I mean, just huge pieces of wood. Look, I mean, Steve, to answer your question, I mean, the difference in weights right now in rackets is not much. From light to medium to heavy, it's really not much. Maybe 1.5 ounces, maybe 2 ounces, something like that. So to me, it's not about the weight. Some of it's the string job too. Is that like, look, I like the oversized racket because for me, I feel like I can have now I get a little bit more of a trampoline, which means that I have less stroke technique I actually have to perform. So, you know, if I'm ever late, it's like, God, how can you be late? Because my backswing is so short and my swing to the contact point is so short that how could I be late? There's just no way. I mean, I should say there's no way. Theoretically, there's no way. But,
Right.
you know, and so you could be late on balls, not because of the weight of the racket. You could be late on the balls because maybe you're gripping too tightly. You know, it's a point of the match where you're getting tight, you're getting nervous, it gets tense, it's a close match. It's a guy you've never beaten before, and dang it, I want to beat this guy. And you get too strong on the grip, you get too grippy, you get tense, and the next thing you know, it could be the lightest toothpick in the world. If you're too tight, you can't deliver at the right timing.
Right.
So
for me, a racket that's and sometimes it's harder to tell, even though the racket might be close to the same weight of what I'm used to. If the balance is if the balance isn't right, then I'll feel like the tip of the racket is coming through too fast.
right,
And
right.
it's just a little too wieldy. So I'm looking for a racket where I tend to like a racket with the balance point like in the center from tip to tail. I tend to like that. And I like a racket that's a little soft out in the tip. Because I like to feel the ball. I like to feel the frame of the racket. A lot of rackets today are so hyper stiff, they're so light, the construction the way it is, that the racket is almost eliminated from producing any feel, and all you're doing is running off of the string tension. I know back when the Wilson first introduced the hammer, everybody, you know, just raced to the hammer. It was like, yeah, it's like, you know, you could probably hold up a 7-Eleven with that racket. It was just so powerful. You could just, you know, you could crush the ball with it. Problem though is that I hit with it and I used one for like a week just to like, okay, what's going on here? And I noticed that the minute the string tension started to go down, the racket itself wasn't providing me with information that I needed on the ball. It was just the string tension in it. And the problem is that if it's just string tension, it's a losing battle because the string tension is constantly going down if you're playing frequently. And so you're now trying to figure this thing out. So for me, the balance of the frame and having a frame that isn't too stiff so I can actually build a relationship with the language of the racket. I hope that makes
That's
sense.
good. That's good. And look, before we get to Robin's question, which I think he's got a good question here on return to serve, I used to play with the Babolat Pure Drive 110 before they put Cortex into the handle of the throat.
Yeah.
And I liked the original Pure Drive because it actually had some vibration. It wasn't super stiff. It had some vibration where I could sort of feel, well, this is what I've just done with the ball. And then they go to the Cortex, they take all the vibration out because people are going, oh man, this thing, you know, I feel vibration. I do this. Well, look, if you're going to squeeze the thing to death, you know, you're going to have problems, right? So then they take all the vibration out. They put in Cortex, zero feel, none. I just said, well, I can't play with this anymore. So that was when I was all over eBay and everywhere going, have you got an original Pure Drive there I could get from you?
It is the racket, the vibration that's moving through the racket up into your hand and in your arm. That's what you're feeling.
That's right.
That's the language of the racket. So
there's nothing wrong with that.
I've used head products forever because I speak that language. I use a Wilson racket. There's some that are close that I can still play pretty well with, but every time, no matter what I move to and try rackets and stuff, and then I come back to the head racket, first ball out of the gate, I go, dink. There's the ball on the strings. Right. There it is. Okay. I gotta stay here. You know. Right. So that's yeah.
So let's answer Robin's question here. Good one. Any difference in how you hit and aim return to serve down the middle on serves out wide versus down the tee? Slight differences. Wide serves obviously take you out from the center.
Any difference in how you hit and aim return to serve down the middle or out wide? I think, well, obviously, mostly we're talking about singles today. You know, you have to decide. Here's another like service return. One of the keys to the kingdom, and that is, you have to decide, like, what I'm going to do with this return before the guy ever serves. I already know my plan. I'm going to, I'm really looking here to stick this ball back to center of the court right at him. And that's a great tactic that, part of what we talked about today. And so if I'm already task oriented, when I step up to return serve, my body then is in auto mode on what to do, how to do it. But if I'm waiting every time the guy's hitting a serve and now I'm filtering through trying to figure out what am I going to do with this return, you're probably behind the 8-ball and behind the 8-ball bad. Now, that doesn't mean I can't call an audible at the line of scrimmage because of the type of serve that comes in, and I have to make a, an adjustment in what's going on, i.e. a super wide serve. I'm just going, opening up the racket face maybe and shoving a lob back off the return up the center of the court. I just need to get back in the point somehow. I just need the ball to land in, right? So, but those are more extreme. I think I found, at least with my game and in my career, that, and I've always been coached this way as well, is that have your plan in place. I know it's like played an exhibition Wednesday night here in Modesto, and I was kind of holding the guy we're playing against, good player lefty. I'm playing the ad side, and he was playing a very aggressive position out in the court. I played it pretty conservative all night because of my partner not being a great returner, so I couldn't really count on that. So I was playing my returns much more consistent and conservative, and I kind of held on to this in my back pocket. Like, if we inched out the first set 7-5, we were up, I think 3-1 or so, something like that. We were looking for that second break in the second set, and I've been holding on to this shot the whole match so far because I didn't really need it. And then it was like, we got a break point. I went, now's the time. I knew, because of the patterns I'm paying attention to, the guy who's serving to me, I know he's going to kick to my back. And so he did. And I just floated this kind of semi-lob down the singles line. And of course, my opponent was just stuck at the net because he was looking to get out there and do something. And the ball just plops in. No one goes and gets it. So I already had a plan in place for that situation.
Yeah.
So, Brenny, how about you? I mean,
well, no, I think that's a good. I think what I was thinking about the whole time is that you can't come up with to answer Robin's question, you can't say, well, every time you get pulled out wide, there's only one thing you do. It depends on your opponents or your opponent in singles. And in my case, I'm like you, Jeff. I'm looking for the possibility of getting pulled out wide. And it's kind of like my response is going to be based on kind of like what my opponent's strengths and or weaknesses are. And if this guy pulls me out wide and he loves to back up, well, maybe I'll just go ahead and play a little dropper. Right. But if he's a serve and volley guy, now maybe I've got to do something a little bit different. So I don't think that you can just say, well, there's one way to play a return to serve if you get pulled out wide, right, because my skill set is different than your skill set in terms of what you can do with that ball, whether it's a forehand, whether it's a backhand. And then I've got to sort of marry that with, well, what's the skill set of my opponent? And so, it could be, sure, let's drive this ball from out wide right up the line. Sure, let's go ahead and carve this little thing over there cross court short. Sure, let's go ahead and drive this thing or float it right back up the middle. So I can't answer that question with, here's the one and only. It's not, we're not engineers. We're not architects. We can't come up with formulas. We're not mathematicians that's saying, well, if A happens, then you got to do B, and that's always going to result in some kind of result that you want. So we've got one more minute, Jeff, and I got to scoot.
Right. I'll say that. Lost my train of thought. On the return to serve of this too, I tend to spend the first couple games returning in singles, driving center court. I want to establish my feel, my return. I also want to get the timing on this guy's serve. Now a couple games in, I'm going to get a chance to see first serve, second serves, and like what's going on here with this guy. And what's going on with the timing on my return today? What's happening
Right.
today on my return?
Right. Sure.
If I come out and I'm hitting that mark and I feel like I've got this guy's timing and blah blah blah, then I'll start to branch out with like balls that all of a sudden they're just like sitting there pretty. I'll go, yeah, I'll press the edge here a little bit and intentionally do something. But all of it is, again, it's observation and an awareness of the reality of what's going on in the moment. So again, Robin, for me, it's not the specific formula. It's way more about, for me, it's way more about having a plan when I step up to the line to return than it is about how am I going to make it happen. You know.
Well, I think the other thing too is you kept your ace of spades in your back pocket in that doubles XO, where you're seeing, all right, this is his tendencies. This is what he likes to do. And all that gets back to false advertising. You've shown this one shot over and over in the match. Well, what are they conditioned? What are they conditioned to seeing is coming from you? And they're thinking, hey, this is a big point, man.
He knocked some of my returns off. He knocked them off for winners. And okay.
Right.
I just didn't want to get overly aggressive and not keep us in the game. I've got to keep this, I've got to keep us where if I've got a partner who's really tagging returns and making things happen, I'll take a little more risk on the ad side and let's see if we can really break this thing open quick.
Yeah.
But so again, that's a little bit more point strategy, playing the score. Well,
look, here's the reality for the rest of us. And the reality is if you just make a ton of returns, even if your intention is to go cross court and you're a hair late and it goes up the line, if you make a ton of returns, you don't have to be surgical with it, you're going to win the match. And look, if you could have the greatest plan of all time and you execute it one time, but then you miss 3 or 4, look, just make returns. That guy's going to miss a few. He's going to hit a couple of winners, but don't go crazy with it. Don't think you have to put yourself into this little tiny mathematical formula.
Last week, last thing I'll say, last week, we talked about it last week in the pattern work, and I, played, and so I was playing some practice sets with a good baseline grinder, and I was working on things, and then it was getting hot and I was tired. I was like, you know what? I don't want to have to serve. So, and I'd gotten a little bit lazy about what I was doing, in the second set. And I said, you know what? If I make every return, you're going to win this game. If I make every return, you're going to win this game. And you know what I did? Every stinging return went up the middle of the court. And I won the game. I mean, literally, he hacked a couple balls that weren't kind of normal for him. And it was like, so he gave me a couple free ones. I hit it up the center. He gave me something to look at. I was able to inflict some pain to just play a regular point. Nothing about that game was magical.
Right.
But I gave myself a task that was very focused. So every time I stepped up to return, I was active. I was engaged in it, just going so focused on making this one thing happen. And that, and then that was over. So anyway, the tactic, up the middle, guys. Take the ball up the middle and start to make mental notes about what you're getting back.
And there you have it. I mean, you could have said that, and we could have, at 11:02, we could have been done. So, all right, guys, thanks for hanging out with us today. Always love it, Jeff. Always great stuff from you. Thank you so much. Guys, we'll do this again. If we can get the great Jeff Jacklitz lined up again. I mean, he is charging me quite a bit of money every time for these appearances. I got to tell you, I may have to start charging you guys, a little bit of something, because just like a door, what's it called? You go to the nightclub and they charge you a door fee or whatever that thing's called. Anyway.
Right. Yeah.
So I guess enough BS, huh? Should we just say goodbye?
Yeah, let's get out of here.
All right, guys. Get out there. Help someone else have a great day, Jeff. Let's do this again soon.
You got it. Can't wait.
Okay. That's what I'm looking for. Can't wait. All right, guys. See you later. Bye.